Welcome to this section in animation. This will be on transitions. So let's look deeper into transitions. It's time to dive into the exciting world of CSS transitions and give your HTML elements some slick transformations. Learning outcomes, what a CSS transition is and when to use it. Know what CSS properties are animatable and which ones are not. How to make sure your transitions are smooth and performant. Transitions. CSS transitions let you animate a change from an element's initial state to an end state. Think of an ordinary button element with a white background. When your mouse is away from the button, it's just sitting there, boring. Then when you hover your mouse cursor over the button, the background color smoothly transitions from white to gray to black over a period of time. This is a CSS transition. Have a look at the code pen below to see one in action. You also have to think in terms of mouse touch interaction that we do in tablets or mobiles. So it's not only a mouse hover, but also you have to think about touch and those features. So let's look into this code pen. Hover your mouse over the rectangle above. Hover and there is a transition. Black background, white text. I go out, it hovers again. It again transitions back. When your mouse cursor is away from the button is in its initial state. When you hover over it, you introduce the end state. The hover state causing the transition of the color smoothly fading from white to black to aqua. So here we have this button, transition property background color, duration is 1 second, and the timing function is ease out, so that's how it's easing out, and a delay of 0.25 second. On hover, the color will change, and that is the time it will take to transition. This was achieved using the transition property, which is actually a shorthand property for transition property, transition duration, transition timing function, and transition delay. So there are 4 parts to transition. We will look deeper into it. Transition property is the background color. Duration was the 1 second that we saw. Timing function is the ease out. There are other different functions also that we'll get to learn. And the transition delay of 0.25 seconds. So there might be a slight delay after you do the action. Transition property determines what CSS property will be transition. In this case, it is the background color. Transition duration determines the duration that the transition will occur over. In this case, the color change will gradually happen over 1 second. Transition timing function. This lets us change the speed of the transition over the course of its duration. Here it will ease out, meaning the color change will be faster at the start than at the end of the transition. Transition delay. This determines the delay at which the transition will start. In this case, the color change starts a quarter of a second after the cursor rests on the button. The shortened property looks like this. So background color, white, transition, background color, 1 second, ease out, and 0.25 seconds. Button hover, background color becomes black. So white, on hover, it will become black. The above transition will occur when the user hovers the mouse over the button as indicated by the hover pseudo class. In addition to the hover, or any of the other pseudo classes, you can also trigger transitions by adding or removing classes with JavaScript. For example, clicking a button would append the open class to a drop-down menu, which would then trigger the opening transition. Performance. Generally, keeping your CSS transitions performant will not be an issue. However, there are a couple of things you need to keep in mind. The first is the stacking context. Basically, a stacking context is formed when certain element scenarios are in place. A relevant scenario for us would be to transition a transform property like below. Div width 100px, height 100px, transition transform 2 seconds, 1 second. On hover, it will rotate 180 degrees. This has created a stacking context. If we were to make a bunch more stacking context through various other means, then when it comes to rendering our initial transform, we would repeat not only our div element, but also every element that is stacked on top of it in the stack context. If left unchecked, this can cause your once buttery smooth transition to become slow and rough. The second thing to keep in mind is that you should keep your animations to only affecting opacity and transform if you want absolute best performance for animations on your web page. Yes, our first example above only carried out a simple background color change, but even that was an expensive operation in itself. What's important is that you have a solid understanding of these concepts and can apply them when necessary, because hey, if you need to turn a button into a rainbow when it's hovered over, you better be able to transition that rainbow. Assignment: read the MDN article for using CSS transition, including the links in the defining transitions section of the article. Make sure you code along with any examples to become familiar with this syntax. Read the MDN article about the stacking context for a deeper understanding. This is an important thing, so make sure you know more about the stacking context, understand it properly. Learn some handy hints on how to create performant CSS animations by reading this article. It's a web.dev article, and check out the link it provides to CSS triggers. It's in a web archive, CSS triggers, to see how an animatable CSS property may affect others. Look at the difference between the background color and transform properties, for example. Learn how to catch and debug repaint issues with this great article from Zavat Usev. So this is on GitHub, so debugging layout repaint issues triggered by CSS transition. So this is a great article. We can look at this. So debugging, so we can see various CSS transition caused by repaint of the whole page. Could it be layers? So different layers, and there is a stacking context. This is the entire stacking. So all these divs are stacked one on top of the other. Solution. So we have solution to how to make this thing work. It's a nice reading. You can also have some further reading on this article. Knowledge check. Are all CSS properties animatable? Most probably not. What are the long and shortened notations for transition? So there are 4 parts to it. What is the stacking context? So you should know well about this thing. Why do you need to keep an eye on repaints so that your CSS is performant? Additional resources. Up until now, you have only controlled the speed of your transition with the help of keyword values like ease and ease in. However, CSS allows you to define your own timing function with the help of timing functions like steps and cubic Bezier. In specific, the cubic Bezier function is widely used. So you can read more about it on the MDN article. This article on blog maximcheck.com discusses cubic Bezier functions in detail. While it has a ton of mathematics, you do not need to delve deep into it apart from creating a basic idea about the purpose. So there are multiple parameters which by changing you can get a way that the timing functions would activate. You can play around with the CSS cubic generator. So this is csportal.com. On csportal.com, you have to not only view how the cubic Bezier value works in an editable demo, but also to compare the different transition timing function values side by side. So this will be an interesting topic to play with. With that, we come to the end of this section. So let's move on to the next one, which will be keyframes.